Hello everyone, my name is Cody, and today I will be presenting my vulnerability assessment project. This project involves analyzing two hidden systems, one Linux-based server and then one Windows-based server, to identify security vulnerabilities and propose solutions. Throughout this presentation, I'll be showing you the processes that I used, the tools that helped me, what I found, and what I learned along the way. First up is a little quick agenda. Here's what I'll be covering today. First, I've got a brief introduction on the importance of vulnerability assessments. Then I'll walk you through an overview of the assessment, the tools I used, and a breakdown of the critical and moderate vulnerabilities discovered. We'll also look at how vulnerabilities are ranked using the CVSS scale before wrapping up with a summary of scan results, conclusions drawn from the project, and the works cited. This way, you'll get the full picture from start to finish. So for the introduction, in today's cybersecurity environment, it's not necessarily a matter of if an organization will be targeted, it's a matter of when. Vulnerability assessments are critical because they allow us to identify weaknesses before attackers do. At least that is the ideal goal. Proactively addressing security flaws reduces risk significantly. In this project, my goal was to simulate a real-world vulnerability scan to find out where weaknesses existed and recommend solutions before any kind of exploitation could take place. To start, I conducted scans on two hidden systems, one running Linux and the other Windows. I used the Greenbone vulnerability management system and Nmap as my primary tools. The scans revealed several high-risk and medium-risk vulnerabilities on both systems. Based on the results, I developed remediation strategies that focused on disabling outdated protocols, updating critical software components, and enforcing strong security policies. This assessment emphasized the importance of ongoing patching, configuration hardening, and strict access control. So for the tools used, the first tool I used was Greenbone GVM, a powerful open source vulnerability scanner that provides a detailed report of known CVEs and system misconfigurations. It's capable of performing full and fast scans, making it highly effective for broad vulnerability discovery. The second tool was Nmap, a network reconnaissance tool that helped me map out open ports, active services, and additional entry points an attacker might exploit or take advantage of. Both tools were essential because they complemented each other basically. Greenbone identified the vulnerabilities, while Nmap gave me network visibility per scans. The Windows server had several critical findings. First, it was still using the SMB v1 protocol, which has well-documented vulnerabilities such as Eternal Blue that contributed to the WannaCry ransomware outbreak. Secondly, RPC services were open and unprotected, exposing the server to potential lateral movement attacks. Finally, default administrative shares like CS were accessible, which could allow unauthorized access users to move across the network or even exfiltrate data. These vulnerabilities, if exploited, could definitely lead to full system compromise. So, to mitigate these risks, I recommend completely disabling SMB v1 through Windows features in PowerShell. Upgrading to SMB v3, which includes strong encryption, was absolutely critical in this case. I also advised restricting RPC access only to internal VLANs using firewall rules and performing regular audits of administrative shares and access control lists actually. These actions would significantly reduce the attack surface and limit lateral movement opportunities within the network. So for the Linux server faced different but equally serious issues to take into account. It was running on an outdated version of OpenSSH that is vulnerable to privilege escalation attacks, specifically CVE 2016-1009. More concerning was that the telnet service was actually still active, which transmits usernames and passwords in simple plain text. Leaving telnet open is basically like inviting attackers to capture credentials and pivot into deeper parts of the system. So not a good idea. These insecure configurations made the Linux server highly vulnerable to man-in-the-middle attacks and unauthorized access. So for recommendations to address these Linux risks, I proposed upgrading OpenSSH to the latest stable version immediately. Telnet services should be completely disabled by removing the telnetd package. I also recommended enforcing key-based authentication for SSH rather than relying simply on passwords, which should further enhance security. Additionally, limiting SSH access through firewall rules to known IP addresses only would help prevent any kind of brute force or unauthorized login attempts. Back to Windows. In terms of medium risks on Windows, two important findings stood out. First, the server was still accepting TLS 1.0 and TLS 1.1 connections, which are outdated encryption protocols vulnerable to downgrade attacks. Second, NetBIOS over TCP/IP was enabled, which can actually leak valuable system information during any kind of reconnaissance. While not as urgent as the high risks, these medium vulnerabilities still represent opportunities for attackers, particularly when chained with other exploits. So for the recommendations on Windows, for remediation, I recommended disabling TLS 1.0 and 1.1 via registry edits or group policy, and enforcing only TLS 1.2 or 1.3 for more secure communications. I also suggested disabling NetBIOS over TCP/IP via adapter settings or even on PowerShell. Finally, I emphasized the importance of regularly rescanning systems to make sure deprecated settings are not accidentally re-enabled after updates or changes are made. Now we're back on Linux. So on the Linux server, two medium risk findings were identified. First, the VSFTPD FTP service was misconfigured, exposing data transmissions without encryption. FTP is considered highly insecure today because credentials and files can easily be intercepted. Second, the system lacked any kind of audit ID, a critical tool for tracking unauthorized activity and changes across the file system, leaving the server less prepared for forensic investigations. For my recommendations, to remediate, I proposed disabling the FTP and replacing it with secure FTP, which just simply encrypts all communications. I also recommended installing and configuring Audit ID to monitor critical directories and files, ensuring that any unauthorized changes triggered an alert. Implementing crt gels for SFTP users could further isolate access and add another security layer on top. All vulnerabilities were ranked using the CVSS scoring system. High-risk vulnerabilities scored between 7 and 10 and included things like remote code execution and privilege escalation. Whereas we've got medium-risk vulnerabilities in the middle. These score between 4.0 and 6.9, typically involving information disclosure or less severe breaches. CVSS helped prioritize my remediation efforts, ensuring that critical flaws were addressed first to minimize the overall attack surface, which is definitely important. The final scan summary shows that the Windows Server had major risks related to SMB v1 and RPC services, along with medium issues involving TLS and Net BIOS. The Linux server faced outdated OpenSSH, Telnet exposure, FTP issues, and even missing auditing capabilities. These findings underline that even simple configuration mistakes or outdated services can have major security implications if left unaddressed. For a quick conclusion and summary, overall, this project reinforced how essential it is to perform regular vulnerability assessments. I learned firsthand how overlooked settings, outdated services, and even just simple misconfigurations can leave systems wide open to a wide array of attacks. It showed me the value of patching, protocol hardening, and secure service configurations are. Greenbone and Nmap proved to be extremely useful, and the hands-on experiences made me a stronger, more security-conscious IT professional. I definitely look forward to using these skills in my future career. Last slide we've got here is a quick little works cited. Definitely recommend the first two on the Center for Internet Security as well as the Microsoft page. Both of those are absolutely great and loaded with all kinds of information. Yeah, that is the presentation. Thank you for your time and attention.